Take the Leap is the podcast where we get real about the roller coaster that is entrepreneurship and life. Sure, some folks make running a business look like a walk in the park, but let's be honest, it's more like a wild ride through a theme park with a lot of unexpected twists and turns.
Join us, your co-hosts, Ashlan
and Tori,
as we spill the beans on our own real-life experiences and shine a spotlight on some amazing guests. From the highs of success stories to the lows of epic failures. And hey, we'll even throw in some cringe-worthy, laugh-out-loud, embarrassing moments for good measure.
So buckle up and tune in every Tuesday and Thursday for a dose of raw, unfiltered truth about what it's really like to chase your dreams and build a business.
Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just dipping your toes into the startup world, we've got something for everyone. Even if it's just to make you think, wow, I'm glad I didn't do what they did. Welcome back, everyone, to the Take the Leap podcast. We are talking today with Joseph Gardonis, is a serial entrepreneur who has 3 different businesses: brand design, real estate, and most recently, Impact Customer Reviews. Impact Customer Reviews is a platform dedicated to businesses reviewing their customers. And we just wanted to say welcome. Thank you for being a guest with us today, Joseph.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We like to start off most of our questions for our guests the same way, and that is, what is your Take the Leap story? How did you get involved in owning your own business, and where did that stem from?
That's a very good question. I like to picture the illustration that what a lot of people think is success is just like this, when in reality it's more like this. And I would say that's the epitome of my own story of how I got into what I'm doing right now. So kind of fast forward back to college. I went to college for graphic design, graduated bachelor's degree in graphic design, and I worked in the industry off and on for periods of bigger offices, corporate offices, and even like the smaller companies, which weren't bad positions in what they did. But then after a while, I kind of got to a point of having a feeling of more to be left to be desired, and I was just kind of wonder what would happen if I started working with clients one-on-one to do this. And it started as simple as I had another coworker of mine who was really into fine arts. He drew these crazy detailed sketches and paintings that I started off drawing before I did anything on a computer, and I'm like, this guy is definitely way more talented than I am. But he was like, Joe, could you post this online for me on accounts and then share it on social media? I'm like, well, Kevin's his name. Kevin, well, I mean, I don't think you need me to do this. It's pretty simple to just no, I don't want to be bothered with it. I'll pay you every month to do this. And then I was like, okay, fine. Yeah, that's cool. And so it started with that. And then, of course, freelance projects that would come up. And then I had the opportunity from a gentleman who ran a nonprofit coffee shop where they had an Artist of the Month feature back in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I'm from. And I met with him, and he met me through LinkedIn. He just kind of randomly messaged me on LinkedIn, and then I met him in person, and he was like, we'd like to have you as an Artist of the Month feature. We really think that, you'd be a good fit. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I had months to prepare for that while working a full-time job, which, I kind of learned the value of planning in a time manner, and then the build up to, a big event. In this case, I called it the public launch of my business. So that took place in October 2015. And then I think about a year later or so, I decided to take the leap and go into it full time. And even then, I didn't have any continual clients because I was just so busy at my regular job. And I was like, I have to kind of cut this because I need more time to network and kind of get more familiar with people in the professional world so that I can hopefully get the kind of leads that I'm getting. A lot of it was trial and error because obviously I've never done anything like this. So that's kind of how it started in that regard. I started with my design business, and in terms of graphic design, web design, social media services that I provide, and that's what happened. I just would go to networking events, and I found out what worked, the kind of events I'd go to, who I met, what didn't work, and kind of learned from there. And as time went on, you get your first client because everybody knows how hard it is to get that first client whenever you're first off in business. And then when you finally do, it's like, oh my gosh, yes. And then, so that's how it was. And then it's like, okay, I got this client, I did this project. So, okay, I got to move on to the next one. And then obviously that whole build up, and then you learn how to ride the bicycle. And then, it kind of just goes from there where you get another client and a couple more projects, and then it just kind of grows year on end. And that's basically what happened in that regard. And up until about the pandemic back in 2020, and that's when I started getting the idea that I need to um, kind of open up other opportunities for business, because while I was doing fine with the design business, I was just kind of like, well, I really want to kind of expand my capabilities, what I was able to do. So the idea of real estate came into play. My father was a realtor, and I attribute a lot of my entrepreneurial mindsets and the tendencies to him, because he was a business owner. He was a realtor, but he was also a general contractor first, and he worked all kinds of random jobs like I did when I was younger. So that's probably where a lot of that comes from. So yeah, I got licensed in 2021. And then, of course, for Impact Customer Reviews, it was a project that I had been working on with a gentleman and his business partner back in 2020. And there was delays that happened. It was kind of like a roller coaster journey. And then I guess it was spring about 2023. I got word that the main business partner I was in collaboration with for Impact Customer Reviews had passed away suddenly. So I reached out to his business partner, and was like, "Hey, I got the word about so and so. I'm really sorry about this happening. If there's anything I can do to support this, please let me know. If you guys want to move on from this and call it a day, that's totally fine. But if you want to continue, let me know how I can basically help further this." So he's like, "Give me some time. I'm going to chat with the lawyer to see what our options on." And then he got back to me a couple weeks later, and then told me that he did want to continue it. And then it was kind of like a conversation over the phone, because at the time, my wife, who was 7 months pregnant, we were going to be moving out of the Washington, D.C. area, because that's where we were living at the time. And then we were moved back to Pittsburgh. So I told him, well, okay, here's what I would do if I was, like basically what we're going to take for this to get launched again. And he goes, well, why don't I bring you on as a business partner? And I was just kind of like, well, let me think about this, because I'm like, I'm just moving, getting my life started again in Pittsburgh. I don't know if I need to be starting another business. But when I begin to kind of just think about the opportunity to kind of do the platform that Impact Customer Reviews is, and it was a very rare, unique opportunity. And he had always been great with taking care of anything I needed, like payment wise. I was like, I think this is just too good to pass up, and maybe I can just, like basically do all the things I do through my design business, and then treat this as my biggest client, and then have this be an opportunity to kind of showcase the fullness of what I can do from a brand that I essentially kind of helped build from the ground up. So when I got back in Pittsburgh, we met and chatted more about what that would look like, and we agreed to basically get it launched and get it going. So, fast forward another year, we officially launched it. So that's kind of like the long-winded backstory of like how I got into my businesses and the Take the Leap story. It all started from, I guess back in 2015, and then, it turned into the reality of quitting my full-time job to become a full-time entrepreneur, and it's been that way ever since then.
That's incredible. That's so I love a few things that you said. One, I love that you called yourself a serial entrepreneur. I feel like if you are an entrepreneur of any kind and you start a business, there's like a really good chance you're going to start multiple businesses. I don't know what it is. It's kind of, some people say it's kind of like tattoos, like you get one tattoo, you keep getting one. I don't know, but like I feel like the same way with entrepreneurship. And I love what you said about success not being, like the graph not being like a straight line up. It's like ups and downs and roller coasters. And I feel like that's just, there's a personality type that's drawn to living life that way. And I feel like it's all worth it, because you're doing what you want to be doing, and you're doing what you want. So thank you for sharing your story. That's incredible. And 3 businesses. I bet that keeps you a little bit busy.
Very. All the time there's something to think about, even at late hours of night when my wife has already kind of gone to bed, and I'm thinking about like, okay, and oftentimes it works out this way where like, she works a very demanding job as a resident, and obviously being a mommy, that's very, tough for her. So a lot of times she's going to bed way before I am, and then after she goes to bed, that's when I get on my computer, hop on, and like work on things late at night for, any one of those businesses. So yes, it's very busy.
Yeah. I was going to say, Tori knows a little bit about serial entrepreneurship. I know that you guys she and her husband have a business together. And I've been seeing it just slowly come alive again for the holiday season. So,
Cool.
yeah, Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story. What we would love to know is what piece of advice would you give yourself when you started any of those things, knowing what you know now?
I think the biggest key is being as open-minded as you possibly can, and not in the sense of like coming up with all the biggest ideas ever, but more so like what do you do when things don't work out? Like including like because we've all had those instances where we've had a business relationship or a business experience that didn't exactly go the way that anybody wanted, whether it was our fault, it was the client's fault, or maybe it was, kind of like there's blame on all sides to go around. But like, what are you going to do to mitigate that? And I found oftentimes I've in a lot of ways learned more from when things didn't work out than when things did go brilliantly. Because obviously, like, yeah, everybody wants things to go brilliantly and everybody loves a good outcome. But like, there's only so much growth that can occur through that because at the end of the day, if everybody's happy, everybody's happy. But how many of us can honestly say, even when things didn't go well, we ask ourselves, like, what can we do to make things better? I mean, sometimes that question comes up, but I think that gets more asked whenever things don't exactly go as planned. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a bad way, but it can also be like in a, the project took a different turn, or maybe it took longer than we expected, or, client's house search took longer than expected. And then kind of asking, like, okay, what would I do to improve this process so it's a better experience for everybody and all, or maybe how I can safeguard against this kind of scenario coming up again in the future. And I think having that kind of open mind, because at the end of the day, whether it's, there's blame to go on you, or maybe it was just a difficult customer. I think at the end of the day, just trying to do everything with excellence and how you can safeguard yourself so that in the end you're creating the best possible experience for whoever you're dealing with is going to be a huge thing. And obviously, like, being persistent and not being afraid to, ask more than once, and not like the kind of like desperation kind of ask, because you never want to appear desperate. Just the kind, I call it gentle persistence, where, you're not afraid to ask once, maybe twice, and I'm not talking about you ask 3 times in like a 2 hour span, but like, every week or so, kind of like a drip thing, because you just never know how things can change in the way that they can and what can open up if you're just kind of if you're there and you're responsive. And I think a lot of that has to do with just kind of always having that optimism, because even when you get to a point where like, man, things are kind of looking a little bleak, how am I going to get new clients or new prospects or whatever, like, if anything, those moments allow for you to come up with more creative ways to go about that. And when you have those down times, look for opportunities to like improve your own branding. Like, a lot of times when I have downtime, I'm going on my website, like, okay, I want to change the wording of this, or I want to improve this setting on the website, or maybe I want to change the way this is displaying. Because the reality is we don't always get that kind of downtime. So I think, being productive and how you can enhance your own experiences whenever you do have those down moments is another key too, instead of just kind of sitting around, watching TV in the middle of the afternoon or anything like that. But like, always having an open mind of like, you know, like, how can I challenge and stretch myself? Which I feel like a lot of people say it, but it's really true when you do that. And then obviously, how can I always be asking myself the question of what I can do to improve this experience for everybody involved?
That's great. I love that. And as a marketing person, I love your suggestion of whenever you have downtime, going through your branding. I wish more people would do that. Making sure all your stuff is current and your services and pricing makes sense on your website and the language fits, because things change
Yeah.
and evolve as you go along. And if you don't pay attention to how you're presenting yourself online, like, you could be presenting yourself in a completely different way than you want to be at that
hmm
point. So I love that.
Yeah, not being afraid to
That's
ask for
great.
another opinion from somebody, like, and
Yeah.
especially somebody who has an eye for marketing messaging, because sometimes what we're saying makes sense in our own head, but that doesn't mean it makes sense to everybody else. And then having like a second or third opinion to kind of be like, hey, you might want to think about how this looks or how you're phrasing this on your website, or what have you. Like, I found that can be helpful as well. So.
Absolutely. And I feel like marketing people are the worst offenders of following their own advice for their own businesses. Like, just
Mhm,
coming from my
100%.
mhm,
yeah, yeah.
100%.
Like, I will tell my clients to do something and then, turn around and
mhm,
not do that as well sometimes. So I think it's just always a good reminder
mhm,
of, you know, how you can be always putting your best foot forward.
Yeah.
mhm.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to move on to the next question before we jump into our round of hot seat questions. And that is, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? Why are you an entrepreneur? what do you do this for?
So I think the biggest reason that I wanted to take this leap was it started off as simple as I don't like working for somebody, and I know that's kind of like a little bit crass and kind of shallow, but that's how it started off with. But I feel like over time, the kind of freedom that I've had to, as far as like personal life aspects, and then of course, now more so in the case of family dynamics, like the fact that my wife's at work, putting in long hours at the hospital a lot of times, and then I'm able to stay at home, work from home, like watch my kid, and my mom and my mother-in-law each usually come a day in a week to help out with that, so I at least have 2 days of uninterrupted, working time during the day. But just the freedom to be able to kind of be there for my kid and do something that a lot of dads can't say that they can do. I know that things have changed in the past few years because of the pandemic with more people working from home, but there's still a lot of people, especially dads who work, and then the wife works too, who would love the opportunity to be around more for their kid, and I get to do that. And so I think I've realized like the personal freedom that comes from like what I'm doing entrepreneur wise and kind of being my own boss, but more so I think the big message, and I realized that the heart of what I like to do is to not think of it in terms of like how much I'm making sales wise or money wise, or just view this as a transaction, because obviously that's kind of yeah. I mean, obviously we're all in it business to make money, but to dig a little deeper in terms of like how this is impacting another person's life. If, for instance, when it comes to brand design, I work a lot with people who are just starting up their own business, who are taking the same leap that I did. So how am I helping them kind of change their own life? Obviously, they have a dream and a vision, and how can I put it to life through boosting their visual impression, giving them the visual assets that they're going to need to ultimately market themselves, so that they can ultimately help kind of live the dream in their own way, and be their own boss in their own way by giving them like a credible branding piece. So in terms of that, and obviously when it comes to anybody who's bought a house understands this, that it's a very much a life-changing decision. And obviously if you sold a house too, that could be equally as life-changing. So again, thinking of real estate in terms of like how can this help change somebody's life, and not just look at it as like, a sales or commission. Because obviously almost every realtor and their mother, I swear, advertises like, oh, I'm a multi-million dollar producer. And all. It's like, yeah, we all know that because we're all that, whether we are or not, sort of thing. But it's like, I think at the end of the day, what kind of appeals more so, at least to me, is the messaging of like how this changed somebody's life and letting them tell their story through real estate, and of course through impact customer reviews and the platform of it being businesses reviewing their customers. I mean, there's nothing really like that out there right now. And then we've all had those bad experiences, especially contract based businesses, where maybe if we would have known more about the client we were getting into with, we would have probably done things a little bit differently, and it ended up being more of a headache and stressor, and maybe even a financial problem for us than we realized. Because I mean, my dad was a general contractor, and unfortunately, he's had the unfortunate experience of like building whatever for a customer in terms of like their house, which obviously can involve thousands of dollars worth of material resources, and they decide to not pay. So that's wonderful. But so I think just between that and my experiences and the fact that my current business partner for Impact Customer Reviews is an HVAC contractor, and he has several other businesses too. But he's obviously dealt with people who just don't pay in that profession as well. So I think having an opportunity for voices to be heard as far as like contractors who have questionable experiences with clients, but also the opportunity to validate customers, because we did not want this to be just a bashing site. That's why we've allowed only star score based reviews, no comments, and then allow for good reviews to be left, especially if they're 4 to 5 stars or up, because obviously that can affirm a good customer, and I would argue that it can actually save them money. So in the end, everybody benefits from that platform whenever, especially when there's good reviews left. So I think at the end of the day, yes, it's been tailored to being able to do what I do with my family, but also the fact that what I view what I'm doing as life changing. So I think that's what drives a lot of what I do.
That's wonderful. I love that answer.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we are going to dive into our hot seat questions. So we're going to do 5 different questions that are meant to be answered quickly and easily, or not quickly. It just depends. But I'm really glad that you shared, or I'm going to share the first question. I wanted to dive in more to impact customer reviews. I know that was something that you had shared with me. Oh gosh, a few months ago on one of our networking connection calls. And, I guess from your perspective, why are reviews so important? Because I do think a lot of times when I am working with new clients, they'll be like, oh, I don't need reviews, or, oh, I don't want to spend time gathering reviews. But I feel like they are such a key decision-making factor for if somebody goes with somebody. So I guess from your experience in launching impact customer reviews, why should people choose to go that type of route, and why you think reviews are very important for businesses of all kinds?
No, that's a great question. In fact, I think I recently shared something on social media through Impact Customer Reviews pages because I currently run the social media pages for that. That customers, as much as 89% of all customers, heavily factor in reviews that they see about a business and if they choose to do business with them, and based on that, opinion. And even like, with my wife and I, the times that we've moved, we like to check out reviews of, like the townhouse complexes or apartment complexes that we moved into, because obviously that's pretty telling. And we understand that in those cases that a lot of times there may be a slant the other way, because I feel like a lot of times the only time you hear any kind of reviews if there's a bad experience and there's not enough good experiences. However, to the point of like what you're making with your customers or why they should want to go with reviews is because, and I would tell any of my social media clients, like, we need to highlight good reviews because obviously this adds a great deal of marketability and credibility to what you're doing. And I guess in the case with impact customer reviews and the context thereof, I think in the end, the idea of allowing the reviews to help a business that does, we'll just call like a customer due diligence in this case, and the importance of that, and kind of give them an idea of like what they're getting into based on another business's experience with that customer. Like, let's just say I look up a customer online and they have like, 4 to 5 stars, or maybe they have 4.5 or 5 star, 5 out of 5 star reviews. Obviously, I'm going to feel pretty good about working with them because that tells me that obviously, like, they've paid on time, they've been easy to work with. This contractor would work with them again. Those kind of questions have been answered. So that gives me a good deal of confidence that, like, this isn't going to be a problem, obviously. Now, if it kind of gets into that middle ground where it's like, 3 to 4 or so, then it's like, okay, maybe there's a couple things I should watch out with, because maybe they scored high, like they paid on time in full, like they got a 5 stars, but they were kind of slow when it came to other things. Maybe there's certain things that I can do to help, kind of move things along, because I know I'm going to get paid, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I want to be able to complete this on time because I have other projects I need to get to and other customers I need to wait on. So just kind of doing that due diligence part. And then obviously, if they get under 3, then it's like, we're not really there to steer anybody and tell them what to do to approach that situation. We're just there to provide a means of having that information be out there so that you, the business owner, could decide what to do about that situation. But obviously, like, if I, deal with a customer that, might have a 2 star score or under, I'm going to have to think a little bit about how I want to approach that. Not necessarily that I might not want to do business with them entirely, but maybe I need to, like, get a little more money up front or something like that. Or maybe I need to, kind of
Mm.
put more milestones up front, or just, kind of vet them properly. Because obviously there's always a chance
Mhm.
that maybe that was just a one-off experience. But obviously if there's a consistent line of opinion, then that means that there's probably a pattern there that you should be wary of. So I think in the end, I mean, when you add up the fact of, like, if you don't sign up for the platform and then you work with a customer who did have a review on the platform and you could have known about that, if based off a previous experience, and then obviously if you get burned, then, unfortunately there's not really a ton of great safeguards for businesses that get shorted on a job, because at the end of the day you could go to like a claims court, but you have to pay lawyer fees for that
Mhm.
even if you do win. So in the end, it's your time and it's your money, and if that can be spared through, just looking up a customer with the star score based reviews on Impact's customer reviews, I think that would be worth more than its weight in gold if you were able to at least mitigate that to some extent. So that's why I think it's very relevant.
Awesome. Um, okay. Well, moving on to the next question, kind of taking a left turn here. Um, Best or worst piece of advice you've ever received throughout your career?
So I think the best piece of advice I ever got was to just never give up, and ultimately, like, sky's the limit. I know that those are kind of cliche sayings, but I mean, anybody who started a business, I mean, we've all gone through the phases of, like, man, I just cannot generate a lead into business to save my life. Even when I do everything right that I know I should be doing, I'm presenting a proposal, everything's going well, but then things come up I had no control over. Maybe it was the client's end, and maybe they just something came up on their end that I have to be patient and be willing to wait for. I think that's the biggest thing is like not giving up and getting frustrated because it's very easy because then you think like, well, I mean, clients can be ready when they are, but my bills are still going to come and I still have a family to support sort of thing. And like, just kind of like always having that kind of persistence to go on, I think has always been a big thing with me to kind of like overcome those, those low points, especially in the beginning stages where, it's like hard, especially when you don't have a ton of clients and don't have a huge, kind of base to build from. And I think too, so worst advice, that, you know, I think probably the worst piece of advice is to just probably just assume that it's always somebody else's fault and it's never your responsibility. That's, in my opinion, it's so funny because in my networking chapter, we've talked about what's examples extreme ownership, and honestly, the first thing I thought of was, well, if you're an entrepreneur, I mean, that is an example of extreme ownership because everything is your responsibility. Your accounting, how you're keeping track of business, getting the proposals done, how you're doing business with clients, how you taking payments. Literally everything is your responsibility. So I think not accepting responsibility, even like I was mentioning earlier, when things do not go right, and understanding that there is an opportunity to learn and improve, even if it wasn't your fault. In a way, it's like, well, how could have I prevented this, or what questions could I have asked in the beginning to help understand what this client needs? Because a lot of times, what I found in my experience, what causes things to go wrong is a misunderstanding and a misalignment of expectations. And I think when you don't take the time to really help understand that, that's where there could be a big disconnect, and there's more likelihood for things to not go exactly the way you planned. So I think the worst advice is to always assume it's not, always, point blame or assume it's not your fault when it's like, even if it isn't my fault per se, it still kind of is my responsibility to do what I can to learn and get better from it, and kind of mitigate the potential for something like this going wrong. And that's basically what's happened anytime something has gone wrong. It's like, okay, maybe I need to have a better process in asking questions up front, or maybe I need to ask more questions than I initially thought, or maybe I need to kind of outline a timeline better, so that there isn't like, well,
Mhm.
when are we going to get this done, or when's this going to be done, and like create milestone points. So I think at the end of the day, that's what I would say.
Yeah. I love that you give that example though, because I feel like I've done that where I have like an elaborate timeline and a schedule and send it to people and they're like, when is this supposed to be? And I'm like, please look at the document that I made for you.
Yeah,
It has all the info. So even to some points, all of these kind of extra things that we do for folks, they still don't use them, or it's easy to shoot you a text message and ask a question instead of like searching for the answer on your own.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
it's an interesting balance of
Mhm.
responsibility on both ends.
Yeah, and over communicating things, especially when it comes to
Yeah.
timelines or like, milestones is another thing. And don't be afraid to like mention it once or twice, because the reality is that
Yeah.
a lot of times our clients and customers are very busy. They have a lot of things going on their
Hmm.
end and things that they won't tell you. So like just,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to, remind them once or twice, and not get,
Hmm.
like I explained this whenever they ask a question that, was probably already covered in the agreement that they signed, but they didn't read it all the way through, or maybe they forgot. So just, being
Hmm.
gracious in that regard goes a long way, and being
Yeah.
responsive to it,
Yeah.
because, when you're responsive at appropriate hours, because I do, unless it's really serious, I do not believe in, answering phone calls or emails in the middle of the night unless it's like actually like a
Oh
real
yeah.
emergency. Like, no, that's not appropriate. Sorry, but when it comes to responsiveness at appropriate hours, and even if you do respond at off hours, but it's like something like an email, and it is something that's like actually okay, yeah, I do have to take a look at this, or like, fix this. I think that goes a long way, and I think the right kind of client will appreciate that, and that means a lot to folks
Hmm.
too. So
Absolutely.
My favorite thing to do, because I too catch up on stuff at night sometimes as well. My favorite thing to do is to respond to all my emails then, because nobody's like sending me a whole bunch of new things at that point in time. And I will actually schedule send most of my responses, because most of it's not urgent. It's just that's when I had the chance to actually sit down and go through everything. And so I'll just schedule send everything for the morning, so that it's like I feel like that's like that extra step of me still being very clear on my boundary of I'm not answering you in the middle of the night. I'm not, working necessarily in the middle of the night. I just get to be flexible because I run my own schedule, know? And that's worked well for me.
Yeah. I also hate when I do that, but I forget to schedule send. Like I'm in a group and I just like hit send on it, and I'm like, dang it.
Yes, I've done that before as well.
Yeah.
That before as well.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, is there any particular tactic that you found to be the most effective in growing any of the businesses?
Yeah. So it's so funny because like I found that my most effective tactic has always been networking, whether it be in person or virtual. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm a pretty relational person, like in terms of like my own friendships and relationships. Usually it's like, like obviously, my wife and my family, but like, my own friends. And I feel like people I have been friends with, I've been friends since like childhood. So I feel like that's like very kind of like in line with how I do business. Now, when it comes to social media, it's very ironic because I think somebody mentioned a comment about like, like being kind of like in that marketing branding space and like not always keeping up with your own branding and marketing. And I am very guilty of that when it comes to social media. So I've been trying to be better the past few months about posting consistently on my social media to kind of like, keep that organic, like top of mind reach. Because unfortunately, I'm not always great with that. Even though I would do this for clients and they're paying me to do this, I'm not always great with keeping up with my own house, figuratively speaking. So sometimes that comes into play though, where like if I do share consistently on social media, or like if somebody thinks of me like on LinkedIn and like somebody comment or post on LinkedIn like, "Hey, I'm looking for a designer to design a catalog," and then they mention my name in it, like making sure I jump on that as quickly as possible and like kind of conveying that responsiveness. And I found that that has actually worked out very well when I'm able to do that, and I do respond in a timely fashion in that regard. But a lot of it's been word of mouth referral on networking and some social media, but I would say that the networking side of things has been very effective in like kind of generating the kind of business I do. But also because I've had people, even when it comes to real estate, just be like, I see you post on social media, like, or people like message me like, "Hey, I'm looking to buy a house, like what do you think about my situation?" And it's like, okay, well, if you're looking to buy a house, here are some resources I have for you to get pre-approved, and that way we can figure out what you can afford. And then there's been situations too where that they've come back and their pre-approval numbers are not exactly wonderful, and I've had to be like, okay, so I just looked up properties, the kind of properties you're looking for at this price range. I think you're going to be very hard pressed to find what you want. So my suggestions are, take some time to save up. Like if you have any debts, pay them off as quick as you can, and we'll talk in a year or something like that. Because unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to do much for you in this situation right now. And be willing to have those kinds of conversations, and even when it comes like more in depth, like side of like design business, especially make refining my process of how I go about, generating leads. Like oftentimes I've learned that asking like set questionnaires, and even, like in the beginning stages of asking like, what are you looking at? What's your target audience? How are you different from, your competitors or your comparables, as I call them? And then, using their answers to give them a written proposal and going through that proposal. If I'm not in person with them, like going over either Zoom or phone, that way we can go through it line by line. I can explain everything clearly, and if they have any questions, ask me right on the spot, and then they get a copy of that at the end of the day. And I find that that works very well in terms of that, because then I'm able to kind of help sell that better, in terms of like what I'm bringing to the table, and give them the vision and articulate that, as opposed to just hand them a copy and be like, "Oh, check out this proposal. Let me know what you think." Like, no, take the time, take 20, 30 minutes, go through it with them, and then, let them figure out. And then if they have any questions, just ask them right on the spot. So I find that those have been very effective as well.
That's so true. I found it's made such a difference when I go through proposals with people, usually via Zoom, but it's just, there's something about, I don't know, I feel like when you send things to people, they just kind of skim it and get to the bottom line without really understanding the full value of what they're getting. And it's so easy for them to just kind of compare pricing or whatever, that way. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if you actually take the time to go through it with them and really iterate the value that they get from it, there's just something about making that
Yes,
connection with people,
absolutely.
and it just makes it click. So yeah, that's such a good tip. I love that. Well, switching gears again, I have another question for you. And this one's kind of a selfish question that for me, because I ask probably every parent this question, because too, am struggling with this. So obviously we're both parents. How do you, I guess, I guess it could be either a question. How do you balance, parenthood with owning three businesses? And has becoming a parent changed your changed you as an entrepreneur?
That's a great question, honestly. So I would say that the balance part gets tricky, mostly because obviously I have a crazy 15-month-old right now, but also because of my wife's work schedule. Like whenever she has to do night shifts, that's always interesting because like she's basically sleeping during the day when I and my daughter Talia are up, and there's been times where I've been like really busy during those weeks. Like I've had a lot of work to do, and I'll do as much as I can during the day. And after I put my daughter to bed and my wife's at work, I will stay up. I've done those stay up past midnight till 1 a.m. Like just trying to like stay on top of things. So um, it definitely keeps things busy all the time, which I kind of like it that way. I don't like having too much free time on my hands as much as I enjoy it when I do get some time to just kind of sit down and think, because I'm definitely like a very introspective and deeper thinker. Like in the late hours of the night, I am that kind of person. But as far as like how it's changed me an entrepreneur, I think in some ways it's kind of you know added an extra layer of urgency to what I'm doing, because at the end of the day, it's like I have a family to take care of and provide for, so I really want to make sure that everything about this is very good, and I'm doing everything I possibly can to like generate as much business and leads as I can because I want to be able to support them. And I'll even say it, being able to charge a little more too, and not willing to back off from certain discounts because it's like, well, I'm already charging what I'm charging, and I can already tell you you're going to get a way better deal out of this than what you're going to get if you hire a full blown marketing agency to do all the things I'm doing for you, like as in like shop staff, payroll, etc. Like I know this is a way better deal, so and I think too, not just getting leads, but the kind of quality leads. It's helped me to kind of think more of like, okay, I know what the numbers are looking like, and I need to like kind of maybe go to a different well to get the kind of leads that I want to be getting. So that conversation has come up, and I would attribute a lot of that to kind of like the urgency and what's at stake. And I know that can kind of sound scary to people. It doesn't have to be. If anything, I would argue that it kind of pushes you to be the best version of yourself as a business person and entrepreneur, and push you to want to do everything with more excellence and more intentionality, as opposed to kind of like randomly casting the rod out and kind of hoping you catch something. It's like, okay, make that, you can do that, but make sure you're going to the right pond, figuratively speaking, to get the most that you can out of it. So I think in a lot of ways it does, like force you to become better at everything you're doing in that regard, which is obviously a positive thing for you and obviously your clients, because the better you're able to provide, the better off they are too. So yeah.
That's an incredible answer. That's so true. I mean, um, I think for me, I've been empowered to say no so much
Mm-hmm.
more, and that has helped in so many different ways. I mean, not even just in business. I think just in personal life too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great answer. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. All right, I have our last question. Of the three businesses that you own and operate, what is your favorite to work on and why?
It's so funny. Because I mean, I wouldn't be doing anything that I'm doing if I didn't enjoy it. So that's always a
Like
fun
it?
question to get asked. Like, well, which one do you like the most? It's like, well, I like them all, but I would say I try to like put things in boxes as far as like how I'm working on businesses, even though that gets blended together a lot because one day I could be working on mostly design projects, and then the next day it's like I'm talking to a client, like we're looking at a house and they want to put an offer in, or I have a listing appointment. So it's like, ooh, I'm looking at all real estate, and I'm pulling up comps and seeing what the pricing's like, and then of course impact customer reviews. I would say probably right now that's probably has the best edge because that's like the newest pet, if you want to call it, and I'm able to basically do all the things I'd be doing for like my design customers, but I get to do it like, with my own flavor to it. And my business partner, again, he's giving me a lot of creative liberties to kind of go about how I'm doing it. And it's funny because he's a little more kind of blunt and even at times like, like more like straightforward than I'm kind of presenting. I kind of have to be like, okay, this needs to pass a refinement filter before we just put this out here or we say it this way. Because I know what he's trying to say, but it's like we have to be a little bit cleaner about our delivery, and then I get to like kind of refine it. So I would say Impact Customer Reviews probably has the edge as far as like being the favorite. And we just had a meeting with a business lawyer about like certain things like we want to trademark and kind of finalize that, and that was fun to kind of have those conversations and like talk about where we want to take this. But no, honestly, like even though, like I mentioned, Impact Customer Reviews definitely probably has the edge because it's like the newest thing and like the excitement behind like doing something that frankly, nobody else is doing right now. Obviously, there's an extra thrill layer added to that. But at the end of the day, I enjoy that all that I do. I want to be able to do all three as long as I possibly can. I mean, I know at some point something will probably have to give, but I'm glad to obviously help people buy and sell their homes because that's always fun, even though it's a crazy complicated process and there's always unknowns that can kind of really put people on edge about that. But there's nothing like when you get to closing and then the deal's done, somebody moves in their house, somebody sells it, and obviously if there was profits to be made from it, they're happy, of course. Everybody's happy at the end of the day, so that's fun. And then of course when it comes to brand design, the creative side of the business that's involved, and then just being able to create whether it's logo design and then marketing collateral pieces and or even like the website design and run their social media accounts. It's always interesting because I like to call myself industry agnostic, even though obviously there's kind of preferred industries I like to work with. But it always keeps things interesting because there's never a situation where every job is exactly the same. And just like how, I mean, it translates over into almost every part of real estate too, because not every single house is exactly the same, not every single case. And I think it always keeps things interesting. And, I think I can relate a lot to my wife on that because she enjoys like the kind of field that she's in with her residency because she's dealing with different patients and scenarios all the time, and she's the kind of person that I think we're both like in the way we kind of get bored easily, so we like that constant like excitement and difference and always having something to look forward to, and I think that's what I enjoy about everything I'm doing. So
That's wonderful.
That's great. That's awesome.
All right. Well, we have come to the end of our questions. Thank you again so much for talking with us today. Is there anything that you want to plug or anything that you want to let our audience know before we sign off today?
Yeah. So people ask me like, well, what's the best way to get connected with you because you have multiple businesses? Like, how can I reach you? The simplest way I put it is I have a link tree from all my businesses, and I have like a general brand. It's just my last name, and I include like the businesses that are in there. But I do have a link tree. If you look me up, it's just linktree.com/Gardonis. If you want to get connected, however you want to connect with me, because that was the idea. Like I want to give people an opportunity to connect with me however they want to, and it's on my social media pages. And I don't know if we're gonna have a link for that, in here somewhere, but
we will in the show notes.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. So cool. I figured so, but I just want to put that out there in case you did. So there's that. But also, because obviously I talk a lot about impact customer reviews, and if anybody out there is an entrepreneur or business person, because it's not specific for just one kind of industry. Yes, like we have contractors on there, but I call it for all contract-based industries because the questions we ask are relevant to like whether you're an HVAC professional, electrician, or you're even a creative professional like a graphic designer, web designer, videographer, photographer, because we have people in those spaces join our site. The questions we have are relevant to basically what you would deal with, and anything that you can leave as far as input is gladly welcome in reviews, because right now we're offering free memberships for leaving reviews as many as you want, however much as you want. Just not the multiple reviews from the same customer, just one. But obviously, if you want to review, 50 of your clients, go put them all on there. It's absolutely free. You will not be charged for that. Because right now we're just trying to get people on the website because we recognize that the more reviews we have, the more valuable of a tool it is for everybody involved. So we're trying to make this as easy as possible. And all it takes is your name, username, password, and valid EIN number. That's all it takes for you to join this platform. And obviously, if you want to read reviews because you want to learn more, we're offering a 3-month free trial where for 3 months straight, you can read as many reviews as you want, and then you get billed on a yearly basis. But if you don't want to do the yearly membership, we also have a monthly membership where you get a free month free trial, 1 month, and then you get billed on a monthly basis at impactcustomerreviews.com. So between that, and then we're going to have an app being developed shortly for that. Once my business partner gets back from vacation, we're going to focus a lot on that, like working on getting an app developed that people can have on their phone, and then they can go to the site, or if they met a customer, whether it's in person or virtually, they can look them up with their appropriate membership that they have through our website, and then be able to keep themselves informed, because we believe that this has the ability to change the way businesses engage with their customers for years to come. So that's just my last little plug.
I love that. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being on and for chatting with us and our listeners. And I know they're just going to learn a lot from that. And it's been a really great conversation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, ladies, so much for having me on the show. I so appreciate this.
Yeah. Yes. And for our listeners, don't forget, if you have feedback about any episodes, check out our website, taketheleap-today.com. You can leave us feedback on our listener feedback form, or if you have an idea for a guest or want to request to be a guest, you can also fill out our form there. And we will see you next time on Take the Leap.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Take the Leap podcast. We hope you found useful takeaways you can apply to your entrepreneurial journey. Subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and keep in touch and follow us on Instagram. If you have business questions, shoot us a direct message or leave us a comment. We'll try to cover it in an upcoming episode. And visit our website, taketheleap-today.com, for more resources like our online course that accompanies this podcast.